All right, so today we have to start by talking about this tweet from Pierre Poilievre, and he says, disappointing job numbers today. They show the recovery grinding to a halt. We continue to have the second highest unemployment in the G7. The unemployment rate barely budged when it should be plummeting in the post-lockdown period. Now, this is something that I've been talking about so much, but again, I believe it's probably the biggest issue we face today, so I don't think you can talk about it enough. And it's something that people are going to realize at one point or another. But I think the problem is that it'll be too late. We will be deep into a recession, or I mean, for all we know, it'll be the technically. I mean, we're already in a recession, so maybe we'll recover into a slightly less bad recession. I guess would be a good way of putting it. But again, people don't realize just how bad things could be because you have these people, and they're probably not people watching this, unfortunately, but they genuinely believe, like I mentioned over and over again, that there's no downside to these lockdowns. The government can just give people free money. We can shut things down, and the government can just give people free money. But it's literal like kindergarten levels of thinking that you can't do that. That's not how it works. And the thing that bothers me the most, right, like the thing that bothers me the most is that most of this stuff is completely unnecessary. There is no need for 99% of the rules and these regulations and bylaws that we have to be in place. There's no reason for the vast majority of it, right? There's no reason for it, and that's a big problem. And like I said, I don't think people think that it's just this temporary thing. Which again, we're going on what 8 months into this roughly, and it's not a temporary thing. Like it's not a temporary thing. The tourism industry may not go back to normal for who knows how long. It's going to be at least a year or two for a lot of these industries to get back to normal, and that's minimum, right? Like people don't realize just how bad this could be. And here's the thing: this whole situation, it could become an endemic thing. Like it may never go away. It may never go away. It could be just like the flu, to where it spikes up and spikes down, in the warmer periods, right? So this is something that people don't realize, and not to mention too, there's evidence that's slowly starting to point to this. And this is the problem too. People think, oh, once we get a vaccine, we'll be good. Well, no, it's not how it works. Number one, we may never get a vaccine, and there's been many experts that have mentioned this. Number two, if we get a vaccine, it may be 5, 10 years from now, right? It may be, for all we know, we may get a vaccine, but by that time, it's pointless. It's died out, right? So number one, we may not get it. Number two, we may get it when it's too late. And number three, even if we do get it, it's rather likely, I mean, it's probably more likely than not that it doesn't do anything, or at the very least, it has very minimal effects on the spread. I mean, look at the flu shot. The flu shot hardly does anything to prevent against the flu. So that's a lot of things that people just don't realize, right? And it just boggles my mind how some people can think, oh, well, it's just a temporary thing. We'll be out of it before you know it, and things will be back to normal. Well, I don't think so. I think this is going to be a distinct life was like this prior to this whole situation, and life was like this after it. Now, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way, but the governments seem hell bent on that. So that is a big problem. And what are the solutions here? What are the solutions? I mean, there's no perfect solution. I don't think there's a solution that's going to get us 3% unemployment and it's going to completely destroy the whole virus situation. That's not going to happen. But the solutions are, like I say, get rid of the vast majority of rules and regulations, because the vast majority of them are completely pointless. That's as far as that goes. I think if you want to have some restrictions on, um, when it comes to people that are at risk or people that are really old people, yeah, but any restriction, I mean, like the whole quarantining young healthy people, making young healthy people wear masks. There's no scientific evidence whatsoever that backs that up. In fact, there's plenty of scientific evidence that points towards you should be doing the exact opposite. So that's something that people should be keeping in mind. But again, when it comes to the economy, I mean, that's the worst part. Like, that's the worst part. We need to massively deregulate. We need to cut, like I said, we need to cut regulations. We need to make it easier to start and run a business, not harder. Um, like we need to do a lot of that kind of stuff. We need to cut immigration. That's a big one. Again, like people think, like I say, people think that things are just a light switch. You can just flip it on and off at whim, and that's not how it works. And eventually, we're going to be in for a very rude awakening as a society. I mean, I think we already kind of are, but given all the free money the government's throwing out, then we don't really have to face up to that. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But again, people need to wake up. We need to get things as close to back to normal as we can. But again, that's not going to happen because we have so many governments that just want to grab power, and we have so many people that are dumb enough to let them have it, unfortunately. So anyway, the next thing to bring up was this Whole Foods situation with the poppies. Now again, Jagmeet Singh never misses a chance to make himself look like an idiot, saying it was wrong when they banned staff expressing support for Black Lives Matter, and it's wrong to ban the poppy. Canadians shouldn't lose the right to honor the sacrifices of veterans when they get to go to work. Now again, comparing Black Lives Matter to wearing a poppy is absolute insanity. I mean, that's like comparing, I don't know, like Republican, wearing a Republican or a Democrat shirt, or, a symbol for them to wearing a symbol, in support of cancer or anti-bullying or something along those lines, right? Black Lives Matter is about as political as an organization, aside from the literal political organizations, they're about as political as you can possibly get, right? And the fact that these people like to pretend that's not the case is like, it is beyond me. It is beyond me. Their founders are very open and honest about their far left leanings, right? They're very open and honest about it. And not only that, um, they're very open and honest about the fact that they don't actually care about racial justice, right? Like, I mean, this is the same group of people that rioted over multiple people that were caught on video running at cops with knives, right? They rioted over a guy who died of a drug overdose. They rioted over a violent criminal who got killed because he was violently resisting arrest and had a knife on him, right? Again, so they don't care about racial justice or whatever they want to claim. That's They may care a little bit. They may care a little bit, but that's not the main goal. The main goal of Black Lives Matter is to push a far left agenda. I mean, defund the police is one of their main objectives, right? That is not a apolitical organization if that's what your one of your main objectives is, right? So again, comparing the two is absolute insanity. And again, Jagmeet Singh, another thing that he does, and I mean Justin Trudeau does as well, but Jagmeet Singh seems to trying to outdo him, I guess. Um, and that they never miss a chance to divide people, right? They never miss a chance to divide people, and this is why they constantly accuse people like Trump of being divisive, right? Is because Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, accuse the other side of what you're doing to deflect your own wrongdoing, right? This is how the game of politics is played these days, especially when it's on the left. Is that one of their favorite tactics is to accuse the other side of what you're guilty of so you can shield any scrutiny to your own positions, right? They always accuse the right of being racist, even though it's their policies that support all the problems they claim to care about. It was not only that, it was the Democrats that always were the racists, and they still are, right? Like in the States, it was literally always the Democrats, right? From the time the country started up until today have been the racists. It was the Democrats that supported slavery. It was the Democrats that supported Jim Crow. It was the Democrats that filibustered the Civil Rights Act. And not only that, it's the Democrats nowadays in places like California that want to abolish the Civil Rights Act, right? Because they want to be able to hire based on race, right? Judge people based off the color of their skin. So it is the left that is the most racist ones. Now, again, is there some racist right wingers? Absolutely, but it is the left. And the reason why I always harp on the left too is that no one actually, I mean, especially in the mainstream, goes after them for this kind of stuff, right? It is the left's positions. Again, they complain endlessly about the wealth gap, but yet it's the left is the one that wants all this Section 8 housing, welfare garbage that keeps people poor. It's the left that wants to enable poverty, right? So again, that's just one example. There's many examples, but nonetheless, and again, like I don't know what exactly as far as Whole Foods goes. I never really talked about that. I don't know what they were thinking. This may just be a case. I mean, they're a big American company. I think they're owned by Amazon actually, which isn't really that good of a sign. But they might just not have recognized or grasped um, just how important it is to Canadians that you wear a poppy and you remember this kind of stuff. Like they just might not understand that, right? But I don't know. I find that hard to believe, but it is possible. Like, do you not actually have? I mean, there's no way they don't have a Canadian head office, right? There's no way they don't have or at the very least a Canadian team of people that run and operate the stores, right? So there's no way they didn't, unless the people that run the Canadian stores are American, or maybe they're just yuppie millennials who don't care about that kind of stuff, maybe. But I mean, it was a terrible move, and I mean, it's going to cost them a little bit. I mean, although I mean, their Canadian market is way smaller than the American market, so I don't think it'll actually hurt them that much. But nonetheless, I have no idea what they were thinking. Like, probably, I would assume it was just some stupid, innocent mistake where they either didn't get any input of any Canadians, or probably the more likely scenario I would say is that the input of the Canadians they got are just some stupid yuppie millennials who don't care about Remembrance Day. That's probably what I would guess. Um, but again, we don't know for sure. The next thing here is Justin Trudeau doubling down on going after free speech. Again, how someone can support this man is beyond me. Like seriously, it's beyond me. Like, and this is the thing that really bothers me, and I don't want to harp on Trudeau as much, but people don't realize just how fragile the things that we have in North America and in Canada and the States specifically are. Like, people nowadays are so. I don't know, for lack of a better word, entitled, that they think that we're just guaranteed that all this kind of stuff that we have, it's a certainty. We're never going to lose it. It doesn't matter what we do. But people don't realize just how close we are. Like we are, especially in Canada. I mean, the states at least they have the First Amendment, but I mean, there's still a lot of garbage going on there. People don't realize just how close we are to losing free speech in Canada. Like we are very close, like very close. And again, one of the big problem, like I always point out with free speech, that people need to realize is that number one, the first thing people point out is, oh, the charter guarantees free speech. Well, again, that doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't matter what the charter says, right? You don't have free speech unless you have it in practice. Now, what does that mean? Number one, there is no laws that prohibit or inhibit the exercise of free speech, which there is in Canada. Um, and not only that, there was a lot of implicit laws. For example, if you want to speak out against Islam, you're usually canceled. Again, that's just one example. There's many of them. But again, the other thing too is that the courts need to hold it up, right? Like it doesn't matter what the law says if the courts don't hold it up, right? So again, like the law can say murder is illegal, but if the courts allow murderers to walk free, well then it doesn't matter what the law says because you're going to walk free. And again, that's another thing that people just refuse to acknowledge, that they say, "Oh no, the charter says this." Well, it doesn't matter if people are being charged, you know, exercising their free speech, then it doesn't matter. And again, the other big thing too is that hardly anybody, in fact, I don't think I've ever met anyone or talked to anyone who says implicitly, I don't believe in the concept of free speech. Nobody ever says that. What they always say is, oh, I believe in free speech, but yet they'll turn around and have their list of exceptions, right? Oh, no, Islamophobia, or you can't yell. This is the example people always bring up. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater, which is a terrible example, right? It's a terrible example because, number one, you can yell fire in a crowded theater if there's a fire. And like I say, the other thing I always bring up too is that do we have any examples? Like, do we have one example throughout history of someone doing that? I've never seen any. And the other thing too is that if you do yell fire in a crowded theater and there's no fire, number one, let's say, there's this big stampede, trying to get out of the theater, and someone hurts themselves, they can sue you, right? They can sue you. And number two, let's just say that, everybody runs out, but there's no issues. The theater's probably going to ban you, right? So this is the thing too that people always bring up. They always question free speech. All the ifs, ands, or buts that people always bring up when it comes to free speech, there's already rules in place that you know don't allow people to do that kind of stuff. There's already laws in place against a direct call for violence, right? This is the other thing people always bring up too. Oh, you can't call for violence. Well, yeah, there's already laws in place for that. There's already laws in place for defamation, for libel, for all this kind of stuff. Now, again, I think in certain circumstances those laws go too far. In other circumstances, they don't go far enough. Uh, for example, you have all these people that can call these, popular non-leftist social media personalities all the worst names in the world and just, get off scot-free. But then on other examples, you have people that, do the slightest thing that's off, and then they get, sued into oblivion for it. So I do think the rules need amending. I don't think that they're perfect, but when it comes to all the list of exceptions that the Trudeaus of the world bring up, they don't have any legitimate concerns, right? They don't have any legitimate concerns. And like I say, the big thing here too is that people don't realize just how close we are to having no free speech. People think that it's this given that we got it forever. There's no questions, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. But again, like I say, people don't realize just how close we are to losing it. And when you do lose it, it's gonna. This is how these kind of things work. Is that when you lose these kind of rights, they take them inch by inch, right? Inch by inch. And then when they can smell blood, they know they're close. That's when they take a kilometer, right? That's when they pounce and they take it all. And because the average person doesn't pay close enough attention, it's all gone pretty much overnight. So the last thing to bring up again is the same kind of thing. From the post-millennial here, a silent demonstration is being held outside the French consulate against the French President Macron's Islamophobic response to recent beheadings in France. Now again, Spencer Fernando, this is a huge problem. People who are within our country yet clearly haven't embraced Canadian values. This is why empty multiculturalism is dangerous, and why integration around shared national values is essential. Now, again, I've talked endlessly about this, endlessly. But again, there's still so many people that don't understand this. Again, probably not people watching this, but again, um, multiculturalism, diversity does not work. It just doesn't work. The France and England and a lot of these European countries are perfect examples of that. You can't just blindly bring in people of all different races and whatnot. No, that's not to say that different races can't work, but again, what color your skin is does not matter. That doesn't matter at all. What matters is the values, right? What matters is shared values. And this is the problem. No, this is the problem too with why people think that it's racist. It's not racist. It's just the fact that white people tend to have a certain set of values, and other colors and whatnot tend to have different values. It's just how it works. And that's why people usually see it in the lens of race rather than in the lens of values. And this is why we can't have mass immigration, and why it is going to destroy Canada, and why we are headed down the same route that France and England and these European countries are. Crime's going up, poverty's going up, and again, the government's what is the government's solution to these things? What is the average person's solution to these things? It's just more of the same, right? And this is why I'm so vehemently against the left, specifically the far left, is that whenever whenever they implement a policy and it doesn't work the way they wanted it, which it almost never does, their solution is never to admit they're wrong, right? Their solution is never to admit they're wrong. It is always, we didn't go far enough, right? We didn't go far enough. A 250,000 immigrants isn't enough. Let's jack it up to 350. Now we're up over 400, right? A little bit of socialism didn't work. Oh, well, more socialism should work, right? Again, it's just pure insanity. And the scariest thing about it too is I don't see a actual government that's actually going to do something about these problems get elected in Canada anytime soon. Maybe never again, or at least never within our lifetimes. And that's a big problem. Like, that is a big problem. The Conservatives have completely sold out. The Liberals are slowly moving further and further leftward, and the NDP is enabling it, right? The NDP is enabling it. And as long as they toss a bone to Quebec, the Bloc will go along with anything, right? So again, the Canadian system is so corrupt, it's so broken that it's impossible to overstate it. And the worst part about it is it's not necessarily the problems themselves, it's convincing the average person that the problems exist. That is the biggest problem. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you like the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. If you haven't already, make sure you check me out on those other platforms below. Follow me on there. If you want to donate, I'd appreciate that as well. But all those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.